FAQ Friday, everyone. It's hashtag FAQ Friday live from my office in the Lake District, Windermere. So this week has been an amazing week, and I was speaking earlier this week on the 1st of October I was live on the BBC Cumbria breakfast show with Mike Zeller. Actually showcasing all about and helping and supporting our hospitality businesses, but actually any businesses who are taking tips because the new regulation came into force on the 1st of October. So I have covered this a few months ago, I think it was, or a few weeks ago, getting ready for the new tipping experience. So I wanted to share with you an hashtag FAQ Friday guide tailored for hoteliers and hospitality businesses regarding the new tipping regulations in the UK. But please, if you're getting any tips, if you're a hairdresser, retail, whatever, and you're getting tips, this applies to you as well. So it includes legal requirements, the best practices and compliance tips, which is really important. So the tipping regulations for hoteliers, but it's for retail, hairdressers or anybody who gets tips. Let's ask some questions to give you some answers. So first of all, I've been asked what are the key legal requirements under the new tipping law. So the first element is fair distribution, tips, gratuities and service charges, yes, service charges included, must be distributed fairly and transparently amongst staff. Employers cannot retain tips for themselves or use them for business expenses by any stretch of the imagination. Can I also say on that note that you must, as an employer, pay them within the month after those tips have been given. Don't forget that, that's really important. You must create a written policy. Employers with over 250 employees must have a written policy on tip distribution. Now, that's the law, that's the legal aspect. But if you're a business that employs less than that, do it anyway. Do it anyway, then you've got a fair system and you're adhering to it. Because it's got to be available to all employees. There cannot be any deductions. Employers cannot deduct from tips other than legally required deductions, for example, tax and national insurance, which would go through the payroll system. Your employees must have an access to these records. Workers have a right to request information on how tips are allocated, which employers must provide within 4 weeks. So make sure you're taking a record. The other question I've been asked this week is what constitutes a tip under the law? A tip includes any payment made voluntary by customers for services rendered, including gratuities, service charges, etc. This law treats mandatory service charges similarly to tips, meaning they must also be distributed fairly. Question 3 I've been asked this week. How can I ensure compliance with the new tipping regulations? Well, we've got to develop a clear tip policy. So draft a comprehensive written policy outlining how the tips are collected and distributed. This is a great marketing tool, by the way, if you're not thinking that. I mentioned that on the Mike Zeller show on BBC Radio Cumbria. Make the policy easily accessible to all employees. Train your staff and management. Educate your team on new regulations and their rights regarding tips so that so it's full transparency and there's no hidden agendas. Train your management on the importance of compliance and fair distribution of practices. That's so key. And don't forget to keep accurate records, maintaining detailed records of all tips that come in and service charges, including how they're allocated amongst the staff. Because if you don't, there's always that story that people tell themselves that they're being taken advantage of, etc. It's not true. Don't forget, as always, to regularly review records to ensure adherence to your tipping policy. Don't forget to communicate with your employees. Actually do this efficiently and effectively. Hold meetings or workshops. Get everybody together to discuss the tipping policy and answer any questions you might be getting. Encourage feedback from your team to improve the tipping process. They might have some great tips for you, great ideas for you. Monitor and review practices regularly, because if you regularly assess your tipping policy and practices to ensure they remain compliant and effective, you're on a win-win situation, and if you're involving your team, it's a mind-blowing experience. Make adjustments as needed based on staff input and changes in the law. I was also asked about what are the best practices for distributing tips. There's lots of different best practices, but equitable distribution, things like considering factors such as hours worked, roles in the organisation, on contributions when distributing tips, but be really clear on the written policy. A fair, transparent approach is essential, and don't stop with the regular payments, because remember the month rule. Excuse me, the month after you got to distribute it, within a month after you've been given it. So make sure that happens, because that's part of the legal aspect. So distribute tips regularly, e.g. weekly or monthly, to ensure staff receive timely compensation. Gone are the days where you say, I'm going to keep it to the end of the year. You can't do that anymore. You've got to pay it. And then involve employees, engage staff in discussions about how tips should be shared. This can foster a sense of ownership and fairness and responsibility, all the good things. And then promote transparency. Clearly communicate how tips are collected and shared with staff, enhancing trust and morale. Another question came about what should I do if a dispute arises regarding tips? Well, you've got to document everything. Keep thorough records of tip allocations and any communication regarding disputes. But if you have open communication, address concerns promptly and professionally. Don't leave it. Encourage open dialogue with employees to resolve issues amicably, and definitely seek legal advice. If your disputes escalate, consider consulting legal counsel familiar with employment law and the new tipping regulations, because what you don't want to do is end up with the tribunal, because that can happen, which will get you in a value of I think max £5,000 people could get asked for compensation for, so be aware of that. I was also asked about what happens if a business fails to comply with the new tipping law. Well, non-compliance can lead to complaints from employees, obviously bad morale, potential employment tribunal claims, which we've just mentioned, and penalties for businesses. So it's crucial to adhere to the law to avoid legal issues and maintain a positive workplace culture. So my big thing is knowing your legalities, knowing what the law means. These are just answering some of the questions that have come in this week. Check out the Mike Zeller show that's on my media channels. I'll also put a link in the comments below with regard to what I told you all on the FAQ Friday a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago, in how to get ready to make sure you're compliant. So I'll add that in, as well as the links to help and support you, so you can see on the government website what it actually means in detail if you want to access it fully. But by staying informed and proactive about the new tipping regulations, hoteliers can create a fair, transparent and compliant environment that benefits both employees and customers. So don't forget to make the most out of this experience. I would advise you, as I said on the mic, Zella Show is market what you do to the outside world. I would put it on your website and highlight how proud your team have got together because you work together to create it and get it out there and actually promote. You could, if you analysed it, like if you're tracking it, as I've just mentioned, you could use that as an opportunity to say, our employees in the last 3 months have got this much money each week or each month on top of their weekly or monthly wages or salaries. And it's a great beneficial to actually get people attracted to coming into our industry as hospitality. So I hope that's helped and supported you. As always, Alison at ajlakes.com to help and support you to live your best lives. I'm here to help 1 million busy business owners to live their best lives through being emotionally, physically, mentally and financially free from their businesses. And I can do that when I help and support you. So if you liked and share this content to help and support many, I'd be very grateful. I will put the links below as well to help and support you. And please, don't forget to subscribe if you like what you hear. Lots of free content. Just subscribe, please. And may I wish you an amazing Friday, a happy Friday and a happy weekend. And don't forget to, if you've got any questions you want answering, pop it on my emails or any of my social media channels, DM me and we'll answer as soon as we can. So may I wish you a happy Friday, everybody, and a happy weekend. See you soon. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.